Hello everybody! So I decided to do the video that I basically threatened you that I would make. I made the Enid Blyton spanking video. So I was thinking that I should probably put on something a little bit more period accurate. This is better. And I have a thick cloth diaper on. Very ready to do this video. So, as a kid, I had a very deep interest in spankings. I would always surround myself with media that I had a feeling would involve spankings, which is how I got onto Enid Blyton in the first place. I'd read a couple of her books before. I had a couple of them, like The Magic Faraway Tree and The Wishing Chair, which I really loved. And then I came across a spanking reference in an Enid Blyton novel and I thought, well, if she mentions it once, perhaps she mentions it again. I don't know, you guys. You tell me. Does it seem like she mentions it again? Would I have these books with bookmarks in them if she didn't mention it again? I think that Enid has an interest. Well, it could be that she has an interest. Or it could be that being constantly spanked by wizards and that was really common in Enid Blyton's time. That or she's just real into wizards. So, having said that, I don't know how many of these actually involve a wizard, but Enid Blyton likes to write about wizards. In this video, I'm going to rank my top 10 Enid Blyton spanking references. So, in order to do this video, here's what I did. I did a lot of research. So, first I went to my bookshelf and I pulled out all of the books that I could remember specifically having a spanking scene or alluding to a spanking. I collected all of that information and I wrote it down. Then I took that information that I'd written down and I turned it into a table. So the table is spankings in Enid Blyton novels. So this is the information that I got from each scene. So whether the spanking is an actual spanking, whether a character actually gets spanked and you hear it described, whether it's implied or whether it's threatened. I was thinking that a lot of the references in the books were going to be either implied or threatened because it didn't seem likely that we were going to get actual direct references to spankings happening as the reader is reading. Most of the spankings were actual spankings that are fully described. A couple of them are implied and a couple of them are threatened. Into this list, only 2 that were threatened and 2 that were implied made it into the final 10 of all the references that I found. I wrote down the book title, I wrote down the page number where you can find the spanking scene, the number of spanks given, or the intensity of the spanking. She doesn't often make reference to the number of strokes, which I found interesting. Who was spanked, why were they spanked, and by who. Using all of this information and some other additional criteria is what made me put the books where they were ranked. And I'll go into each one in detail when I get to the countdown. This isn't an exhaustive list of every spanking reference that's found in Enid Blyton books. These are my top 10 of the spanking references that I found in books that I already owned. If you guys want me to become like the Brian David Gilbert of the ABDL world and do a video where I find every single spanking reference and just compile them, then I will do that. No, actually, that sounds really hard. There's so many books that I don't own already and so many books that would cost so much money because they've been out of print for the longest amount of time. Please don't make me do that. So yeah, these references are mostly just ones that I knew to look for. I did a skim through of all the Enid Blyton books that I had on my shelf to see if any spankings are mentioned, and then I just put those into the table if I found any extra ones. So these are my ranking criteria. Is the spanking justified? So I don't really like stories where a character is spanked and they haven't done anything to deserve the spanking. Spankings that are given in loving discipline and they help alleviate guilt on the part of the naughty person and they help teach valuable lessons, etc. I really don't like scenes where it doesn't feel fair that the person's being spanked. So I'm taking that into account. I'm taking style points into account. So is it a really out of the box spanking scene? Does something really interesting happen? Is it like as a result of an amazing story, or is it just because somebody said a swear? Is it stylish? Is it interesting? And the last one is, does it have special resonance with me? So if it was a scene that I, like, from a book that I read over and over as a child, it's generally going to get higher points than a book that I only read once and didn't really care about, even if it's a pretty good spanking scene. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's jump into my top 10 spanking references in Enid Blyton novels, ranked from least interesting to most interesting. Ooh. Number 10 comes from a book called The House with Six Legs, in a story called The Boy Who Made Faces. And it's basically just, if you make too many faces, the winds will change and your face will get stuck that way. Ah, ha, 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 ha. So that happens to the boy. He pulls this face. His mum warns him that his face will get stuck like that, and it does, as you could probably already tell. And Willie's face was stuck. He squinted and his tongue went in and out. He didn't notice it at first as he ran off squinting, his tongue going in and out rudely. Oh dear, I squinted too hard and my eyes won't come right. And why won't my tongue keep in? Goodness, here comes my headmaster. Oh no, he pulls the rude face at the headmaster. Heck. And then he pulls the rude face at his mum. Oh no. And then his dad comes home. And what do you think Willie does? Oh no, he's under a magic spell and his face got stuck that way. So he pulls the naughty face at his daddy, who is not happy with him at all. Oh, Daddy, began poor Willie, but he got no further because out popped his tongue and waggled itself at his astonished father. Well, quite a lot of things happened to Willie after that, because his father had a hot temper and didn't allow boys to behave rudely to him. That's for being rude to your headmaster, to your mother, and to me, said his father. 3 very good spanks. Now let me see if your tongue is better. And of course his tongue was better. The spanking cured him. Hooray. I ranked that at number 10 because it is loving discipline. It's just a bit boy makes a face. You can tell throughout the whole story that that's what they're building up to. Sometimes in those stories the character gets spanked. Sometimes a pixie appears and says, have you learnt your lesson? You shouldn't have made so many faces. That's Enid Blyton. Number 9! This is 5 Go to Billycock Hill. And the spanking in this one is pretty simple, which is why I put it at number 9. But I like it a little more than I like the one from The House with Six Legs, because I've kind of imprinted myself on this one character because I love him. So I was the little sibling. I was the littlest sibling when I was growing up. And I loved my big sister so much, and I constantly wanted to be around her, and I was always hanging around when she was spending time with her friends, and some of her friends were really lovely to me, some of them weren't, but I always wanted to hang out with her because she was my big sister and she was so cool. So in this story, it's a Famous 5 book, so they go camping at a farm, and it's called Billycock Hill because it's shaped like a billycock hat, which looks like this, and they meet up with a friend of theirs who's called Toby. And Toby has a baby brother called Benny, who has been offered a pet cat and a pet dog, but does not want a standard pet. What Benny wants is a pig. He has a pet pig and his name is Curly, and I love Curly. And Curly's character flaw is he's constantly running away. So this is the spanking reference. Prepare themselves. Toby, I'm here. Can I come with you? It's Benny and the pigling, said Anne, amused at the little couple making their way excitedly towards them. Timmy ran to Curly. Timmy's the dog, by the way, if you've never read a Famous 5 book, and he's very smart and he's a good boy. Timmy ran to Curly and sniffed him all over, still not quite sure that he wasn't some kind of strange puppy. What are you doing up here? Said Toby sternly. You know you're not supposed to wander too far from the farm. You'll get lost one of these days, Benny. Curly runned away, said Benny, looking up at his big brother with wide brown eyes. You mean you wanted to find out where I'd gone, so you came after me with Curly, said Toby. Curly runned away, and he runned fast, said Benny, looking as if he was going to cry. You're a scoundrel, Benny, said Toby. You make that pigling of yours an excuse for getting about all over the place. You wait until Daddy hears about it. You'll get such a spanking. So that's like an implied spanking happens in that story. It's up at number 9 because it's only implied, but it's not 10 because I love Benny, and I love that he has a pet pig that he loves. And I love the line, Curly runned away, he runned fast. I bet he did, Benny. I bet he did. Moving on. The Sunshine Book. Because I mentioned the Sunshine Book in my summer video where they go on a walk and it's got lovely diagrams of all the birds and animals and things that they see. But it also has a spanking reference. So the spanking reference occurs in a chapter called Hi Feathertail. And what happens is there's a goblin, his name is Big Ears, and he's a naughty boy. Basically, Big Ears the Goblin was always on the lookout for anything he could take. Sometimes it was an apple off a barrow or of somebody's tree. Sometimes it was a biscuit from the counter of Mr. Butter. Oh, Mr. Butter, that's a great name. The grocer's, and sometimes a few flowers from a garden. So he just takes stuff. Let's see. The goose woman gives the bee woman a sack of goose feathers in exchange for a pot of honey. But she has to get the honey first or something or other. And Big Ears is like, oh man, I like some honey. I wish I had some honey. So Big Ears sneaks in and he goes to take the honey, but he smashes the pot by mistake. This is where the first spanking reference comes out. The bee woman comes into the kitchen and says, what's that? She cried and sprang to her feet. Someone in the larder. Perhaps it's the cat. Meow. Huh. Meow. I don't know how, said the cat indignantly. I don't know how to do an indignant meow. From beside the fire. It's not the cat, said the bee woman. Come and see who it is. Won't I spank them? Foreshadowing, perhaps. Big Ears is hiding. Oh, and Big Ears had also fallen down into the honey that he smashed, so he has a sticky butt. Remember that. Oh, there's nowhere to hide. Oh dear. Oh dear. So he gets into the sack of goose feathers that the goose woman brought over. When he gets out of the thing, he walks into town and everybody's laughing at him because he's got a feather stuck to his bottom, which looks like a little tail. The policeman catches him and goes, why do you have this on you? And then the bee woman comes and goes, where did you get that honey? Said the bee woman in an awful voice. And where did you get those goose feathers? Said the goose woman in a dreadfully deep voice. Then Big Ears gets real scared and he gets in trouble. And then the bee woman has magic. She's a magic bee woman who has magic bees. Cool, magic bees. The bee woman puts a spell on him to make the feather stuck to his butt permanent, so everybody will know that he got a feather tail for being naughty and trying to steal honey and getting into a bag of feathers. And here's the actual spanking. Now, Big Ears, you made the tail yourself out of your own wrongdoing, said the bee woman. And it's a pity wrongdoing doesn't always show itself like that, for then we'd know who was good and who was bad. But there's one way I can get rid of this tail for you quickly, though, if you like. Oh, what? Cried Big Ears. Well, if you come along here each day and let me give you a good spanking, I'll soon wear the tail away, said the bee woman. After all, if you had had the spankings you ought to have had for all the wrong things you've done, you wouldn't have grown this tail, so the spankings I should give you to get rid of it would be no more than you ought to have had. But Big Ears ran away in horror. What? Be spanked by the bee woman's hard hands? No, no, no. He still has his tail, and everyone calls out after him, Hi, Feathertail. That's where the title comes from. And one day I'm afraid he'll have to put up with some spankings in order to get rid of it. Well, they'll do him a lot of good, won't they? Poor Big Ears. So this is a mix of the two, because it's a strangely magical character called the Bee Woman giving a spanking for, like, really a practical purpose. She's implying that it's gonna wear the tail away, like the physical act of spanking. But then Enid implies that Oh, well, he's naughty. He should have been spanked this whole time. Ah. In this video, we're not going to be talking about the moral implications of spanking actual children. I'm approaching this from a fetish perspective, and I have no interest in talking or debating whether or not it's okay to spank actual children, because I don't think it is. Moving onward! I don't know why I'm talking in this interesting voice. For fun, perhaps. 5 on a treasure island. So I've already talked about this a little bit. Basically, what happens is there's a character called Georgina. This is also a Famous 5 book. So George, who is part of the Famous 5, is a girl. Her full name's Georgina. She doesn't like being called Georgina, so when the cousins come, the cousins call her by the name Georgina because they don't know that she doesn't like to be called it, so she hides. George hides and doesn't want to come out and spend time with them. So in this edition that I have, I couldn't find my original edition of 5 on a Treasure Island, so I only have the revised edition, but I can remember what it says, so thankfully. My mind's like a steel trap for spanking references. I'm basically an encyclopedia of who got spanked and when. What a useless skill, my goodness. So she's off hiding. "Where's George?" he said in a deep voice. This is George's dad, by the way. "Gone off somewhere again," said Aunt Fanny, vexed. "I told her to stay here and meet her cousins. She wants a good spanking," said Uncle Quentin. The children couldn't quite make out whether he was joking or not. I mentioned Timmy the dog earlier in 5 Go to Billycock Hill, and Timmy was George's dog, who she's been hiding on this island because she was told she wasn't allowed to have this dog because at first Mother liked him, but when he grew bigger he got terribly naughty. "What did he do?" asked Anne. "Well, he's an awfully chewy kind of dog. He chewed up everything he could. A new rug Mother had bought, her nicest hat, Father's slippers, some of his papers and things like that. And he barked too. I liked his bark, but Father didn't. He said it nearly drove him mad. He hit Timothy, and that made me angry, so I was awfully rude to him." I don't like this uncle character. "Did you get spanked?" said Anne. "I wouldn't like to be spanked by your father. He looks fierce." His father hit the dog. So I feel like by my own rules, it's very unfair for George to have been spanked for being rude to her dad, for literally hitting a dog. So this one only got put here at number, where are we up to, 7? Because I didn't like this spanking reference. 1, because I don't like the uncle character. He's kind of a jerk. And 2, because he's definitely a jerk. He hit Timmy the dog, and as we've already established, Timmy the dog is a very good dog. And even if he wasn't a good dog, you don't hit dogs! Next book. So the next book in the list, this is a combination book, so I don't actually have a copy of, there's a book called The Enchanted Wood, which is the very first book in the Faraway Tree series. There's also a book called The Folk of the Faraway Tree, which I do own, and it's the 3rd book in the Faraway Tree series. So it goes The Enchanted Wood, The Magic Faraway Tree, and then this one. So I'm going to lump in all 3 Faraway Tree books here at this stage, because I have also lost my copy of The Magic Faraway Tree. I'm not sure where it is, but all 3 of them have spanking references to them. So in The Enchanted Wood, the characters, so they're called Bessie, Franny, and Jo. And in other books they have cousins that come and stay with them. So in The Magic Faraway Tree it's a character called Dick, whose name was then later changed to Rick because they didn't want to put the word Dick in a kid's book. I guess they couldn't trust people to be adults because it's kids who read them. In The Folk of the Faraway Tree it's a cousin called Connie, and they all have some sort of character flaw which makes it difficult for them to make friends with their cousins. So Dick's thing is that he's naughty and that he runs off and gets himself into trouble. Connie's thing is that she's very prim and proper and scared of things, and yeah, and which I found is a really, really common thing in Enid Blyton books. So there's characters who maybe just aren't very adventurous, but they're portrayed as being just as annoying as characters who like to misbehave. I feel like characters who are little fraidy cats get a really bad time in Enid Blyton novels because everyone's like, you should be brave, you should want to climb this tree and go up the ladder and go into this random new land where we always get trapped and in trouble. You should want to do that. There's something wrong with you for being afraid of that. I would be afraid of that. I would totally be Connie. Anyway, no, Connie's kind of annoying. I don't think I would be Connie. It's like Spankingception. So they make references in this book to a character that they met in the Enchanted Wood. And I can't give you too much information about the character that they meet in the Enchanted Wood because I don't own a copy of it and I couldn't find the text of it online. So in this book has 3 references to spankings. It has 2 references to spankings. So the character that they met in the Enchanted Wood is called Dame Slap. In later editions, they changed her name to Dame Snap. So Dame Slap just spanks people. And as a child, she was terrifying to me. The idea of... Dame Slap runs a boarding school for naughty fairies and pixies. They get sent to her and then Dame Slap teaches them a lesson. And now that I'm reading her chapters as an adult, she just seems a very run-of-the-mill, stern teacher character. She doesn't seem very bad at all. So yes, she does spank Connie, which I will get to in just a moment, but the rest of the chapter is just fairly hilarious to me because of how they react to things that happen. So Connie whispers to Silky, who's a fairy, who is just a lovely character. No faults with Silky. Silky's wonderful. "Silence," said Dame Slap. "You will now do your homework. The new children will please find pencils and paper in their desks. Everyone must answer the questions on the board. If anyone gets them wrong, they will have to be punished." "Oh dear," groaned Silky. Connie whispered to her, "Don't worry, I'm awfully good at lessons. I shall know all the answers and I'll tell you them too." "Who is whispering?" shouted Dame Slap, and everyone jumped. "You, new girl, come up here." Connie came out, trembling. Dame Slap gave her a hard smack on each hand. "Stop crying," said Dame Slap, and Connie stopped. She gave a gulp, but stopped at once. "Go back to your seat and do your homework," ordered the old dame. So Connie gets a spanking. Then the funny part happens. "No talking and no playing," said Dame Slap. "Just hard work. And I'm going to talk to my new cooks in the kitchen about a nice treacle pudding. If I hear anyone talking or playing when I come back, or anyone hasn't done the homework, there will be no nice treacle pudding for any of you." With this awful threat, Dame Slap walked out of the room. "Whew! We must do our homework," whispered Silky to the others. "Connie, read the questions on the board and tell us the answers, quick." So Connie read them, but oh dear me, how could she answer questions like that? She never could. They would all go to bed without pudding, and be spanked, and sent to bed. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So Dame Slap's threat is that they don't get a treacle pudding. As a kid I was just like, oh gosh, Dame Slap, she's so scary, oh goodness. She's gonna hit me twice on the hands and not give me pudding. Oh, heck. She just seems like a stern teacher, like, hey, do your work or you don't get treacle pudding. Seems fair to me, honestly. There's another spanking reference in the Enchanted Wood. There's a character called the Saucepan Man, and all he does is sing and rhyme, but he's in a very bad mood. So the reason that the kids go to Dame Slap's school is because Saucepan Man's mum lives in the land of Dame Slap. She works as the cook in the kitchen who makes treacle pudding. Saucepan Man's other characteristic is that he's deaf as heck. So one of the characters asks Saucepan Man a question and thinks that he's talking about his mum, thinks that, I can't remember who it is, and misunderstands them and thinks that they're insulting her. So he gets very angry and he sings a song. And this is the reason, this and also Dame Slap, who I kind of have a crush on, if I'm being honest, is the reason that this book got ranked so high, or the Faraway tree in general got ranked so high. They peeped cautiously in at the window. Saucepan was there, polishing his kettles at top speed. making them shine brightly. He was singing one of his silly songs very loudly. And I'm not going to sing because I don't know the tune. 2 spankings for Connie, 2 smackings for Joe, 2 scoldings for Bessie, hi tiddly ho. 2 drubbings for Moonface, 2 snubbings for Fan, 2 slappings for Silky, from the old saucepan man. Gracious, he must still be in a very bad temper, said Bessie, quite hurt. And fancy talking about slapping Silky. He's always been so fond of her. No one slaps my Silky. The reference that happens in the Magic Faraway tree. Dick is the character who gets spanked. He goes up into the land of, I think he runs away from something, and he runs up the ladder and he ends up in the land of the old woman. And the old woman is the old woman who lived in a shoe, who had so many children she didn't know what to do. They get mixed up with all of the old woman's kids. And what the old woman does is she lines all of her kids up and spanks them before they go to bed. So Dick and the rest of the characters are in the line, and he goes, you slip out the door, I'll let her spank me, you go slip out the door while she's busy, and I'll run and get you later. I'll run and catch up later. So Dick goes up to her, and I remember the lines, hold out your hands. So Dick holds out his hands, and it says, spank, spank. Dick did not like that at all. He howled as the old woman spanked him. These references, one because I love Dame Slap. I can't remember if there's any, like, actual spankings that occur in the first Dame Slap chapter that happens in the Enchanted Wood. That's why I thought that I would group all of these books together. The Naughtiest Girl in the School. This spanking is really, like, small and kind of inconsequential, but I ranked it so high because it's sweet. I like it. And this is the book that I bought thinking it has to have a spanking reference, and I was lucky enough to discover, yes, it does have a spanking reference. It's just a reference, it's a threat, and it doesn't actually happen. So the story of the naughtiest girl in the school is there's a girl called Elizabeth Allen who is very cute looking. She's been spoiled by her parents, and her parents go, you'll have to go away to school, you're a spoiled brat. Maybe they can teach you some manners. So Elizabeth makes up her mind. She doesn't want to go. She's like, I'll be lonely, I'll be sad, I don't want to go. So she makes up her mind to be as naughty as she possibly can, so she'll be expelled and sent home. And this is in chapter 6, and it's called Elizabeth Joins Her Class. In this book, there's things called monitors, which are basically like prefects that are in the higher grades, and they help wrangle all the little kids. And one of the character who threatens is a monitor. So a bell rang. Nora sat up in her bed, Nora's the monitor, and spoke to the others. That's the bell for getting up, she said. Stir yourselves, you've got half an hour. Elizabeth thought she wouldn't get up. She laid there warm in her bed and looked up at the white ceiling. Nora's voice came sharply to her. Elizabeth Allen, are you getting up or not? Not, said Elizabeth, cheekily. Well, I'm in charge of you 5, and it's my job to get you down to breakfast in good time, said Nora, poking her nose round the curtain. Get up, you lazy creature. Are you a monitor? Asked Elizabeth, remembering the boy from the evening before. Oh, she kicked him. She kicked the boy from the evening before. Such cheek. Heck. I am, said Nora. Come on, get up, Elizabeth, and don't make yourself such a nuisance. Elizabeth still lay there. Nora nodded to Ruth, and the two went beside Elizabeth's bed. Together they stripped all of the bedclothes off the lazy girl and then tipped up the mattress. Elizabeth gave a shriek and slid onto the floor. She was very angry. She rushed at Nora, but Nora was big and strong and caught hold of the angry girl's arms at once. Don't be silly now, she said. Get dressed and hurry up, or I'll spank you with a hairbrush. Monitors do that sometimes, you know. The reason that I like this reference so much is I have a crush on Nora. Nora's Irish, and the way that she's characterized as being like very stern, but also like, but kind and lovely. And I can sympathize with Elizabeth, because who wants to get out of bed, especially when it's cold, and go and have breakfast when you're already somewhere that you don't want to be and you're scared of everything. Yeah, so I sympathize with Elizabeth, and being spanked with a hairbrush is not fun at all. So I really feel for her. So that's why the naughtiest girl in the school is at position 4. A second book of naughty children. With a title like this, just like the book before, you kind of have to assume that there's a spanking in here. And there is. But I found this book after I post-it noted all of the post-it notes. So I've lost the spanking reference. Give me a minute and I'll find it. Let me consult my table that I made. Here we go. Actual and Threatened. A second book of naughty children. Oh, it's page 22. Okay, it happens very early into the book. There's a character called Ned. And Ned is being bullied by 3 big bullies, and they're called Tom, Kenneth, and Dennis. But we're just going to focus on Tom, because Tom is the only one that often happens to. So, Ned meets up with this woman who's called the Balloon Woman, and gives him some magical sweets. And she says, they do queer things. When you're in trouble with any of those bad boys, just pop one of these sweets into your mouth and see what happens. Good luck to you, Ned. So Tom comes up and he's pulling a little girl's hair and hitting all the smaller boys, and Ned goes, that's not very nice, and puts one of the sweets in his mouth and goes up to Tom and goes, hey, stop being a stupid bully. And then Ned grows. Ned grows, you guys. And something did happen. Ned suddenly grew to twice his size. It was most peculiar. There he was, as large as a man, standing high above Tom, who looked as astonished and as scared as could be. If you slap me, it's only fair to let me slap you, said Ned, in a strange, loud voice. I think what you need is a very, very good spanking. And dear me, he picked up Tom and gave him the best spanking that naughty boy had ever had in his life. There, said Ned, to all the surprised and delighted children. That has taught him what it feels like to be spanked and slapped. Would you like to slap anyone else, Tom? If you would, just say so and you can, and then in return I will spank you again. We'll play a fine spanking game. Then Tom runs away crying. He just got spanked by Magic Ned. Very good reference. It has magic. It has a bully being spanked, and I love retribution stories. It has a guy growing huge, which is one of my other special interests. Excellent book. Very much deserved to be at the 4th position. Wait, the 3rd position. More about Amelia Jane. So there's a couple of other Amelia Jane books. There's quite a few actually. I think there might be 5 other ones. But Amelia Jane gets spanked in, I'm pretty sure, every single book. This is just the only one that I could find at the time. So this is the spanking reference that we are focusing on today. This story. Right. So, if you don't know who Amelia Jane is, her whole deal is that she is a doll and she lives in a nursery with a couple of other toys. So there's a sailor doll, there's a teddy bear, there's a clockwork mouse, there's a clown doll, and she's like just a doll is her thing. And she's a huge brat and she's constantly playing pranks on people and not being very nice. One day a new character comes to the nursery. And his name is Mr. Up-and-To because he's got like springs in his joints, so he shakes whenever he walks. So he goes to and fro and up and down. So, but Mr. Up-and-To's thing is that he's very, very forgetful about most things. So he has a big hanky and he ties a knot in his hanky to remind himself of things. And Amelia Jane figures this out and starts tying knots in his hanky to say, oh, the knot is to remember to get me a present. The knot is to tell you to remember to clean my shoes, basically getting him to do chores and so on and so forth. The toys were very, very angry, and the doll's house dolls threatened to fetch a policeman. "If you tell Mr. Uppinto any more naughty things to do, we'll punish you, Amelia Jane," said the bear. "Oh, we know it's you all right. He's too stupid to think of these things himself. Oh, you put them into his head." "Aww, that's really mean." "Oh." And then she does something worse. She puts knots in the hanky to make Mr. Uppinto, like, kick the bear and pull the mouse's tail. Oh no, so mean. And then one day, the toys decide, okay, that's enough, that's not okay. So they tie a really big knot in Mr. Uppinto's hanky. And he's like, "I have no idea what this knot is for. I'll ask Amelia Jane." And the toy's like, "Oh no, don't. She wouldn't dream of telling you what it actually is. That knot, that very large knot, is to remind you to be sure and give Amelia Jane a very large spanking with your hard wooden hand," said the bear. "Don't look so surprised. That's what the knot is there for. Isn't it, everyone?" All the toys nodded and said yes. "She's been bad to you," said Teddy. "She's tried to make you bad too. She must be punished. And you are the one to punish her, Mr. Uppinto. Go now." So he's gone to find Amelia Jane, feeling very cross indeed. She tried to make him bad, did she? Mr. Uppinto didn't want to be bad. He'd show Amelia Jane what a hard wooden hand he had. Amazing. She's hiding, of course, but the wooden man will find her. He's very, very determined once he makes his mind up, and sooner or later there'll be howls from the nursery. I'm sure of that. I don't feel a bit sorry, and neither does anyone else. Amelia Jane has had her fun, and now, alas, she's got to pay for it. I just like this story. This was also a book that I had when I was younger, and I enjoyed it then. I enjoyed it now, and I just enjoy the imagery of, he'll show Amelia Jane what a hard wooden hand he has. Yeah, he will. So that's why that one is at number 2. And also just because I always liked Amelia Jane. She's a little shit. And now it's time for number 1. I could talk about this for the rest of my life. Just this book. Can you see how many post-it notes this has? It's amazing. So, the Book of Brownies. So the Book of Brownies is a story about 3 brownies. Their names are Hop, Skip, and Jump, and they are 3 very naughty brownies. So they go on an adventure, and I'll sort of skim over like the whole adventure. Their adventure brings them to a place that's called the Land of the Clever People. And brace yourselves, because this entire chapter involves spanking. The clever people, who their whole thing is that they all have very large heads, they all speak in rhyme at all times. That's one of their laws in the Land of the Clever People. And the clever people have a thing where a bell will ring in the middle of the day. You all have to go and stand in the town square, and there's a man called the Very Wise Man, and he appears to be like the leader. He seems to be more than a mayor, maybe like a prime minister. I don't know if he's a king. I don't think he's a king. He just seems to be like the head public servant of this town. And he will ask you a riddle, and you have to answer the riddle. And then you have to ask him a riddle back. If you are unable to answer the Very Wise Man's riddle, or if you are unable to come up with a riddle of your own, then you are sent to be spanked. This town appears to have a person on their payroll who is referred to as the Spanker. And he spanks you if you can't answer the riddle. So, yeah. You also get spanked if you don't speak in rhyme all the time, which is difficult for the brownies. So, they come to the town and they realise, oh god, we don't want to be spanked every day. We have to leave. And they won't let them out. They don't let them out. Oh god, they're trapped in the Land of the Clever People. And the Land of this Clever People chapter is so long. It's actually 2 chapters. So you get the adventure in the land of the clever people, and then their adventure in the land of the clever people continued, which is unheard of in Enid Blyton novels. They're usually very, very simple. Here is one of the many references. On went the very wise man to the next person. Everyone answers all right, whispered Hop. No one's getting spanked. Oh, Hop. Hop, darling. You're mistaken, I'm afraid. Just then, the very wise man came to the little girl. Oh, they made friends with the little girl also, who also is not from the land of the clever people. She's from the land of Giggles, and she ran away because she thought she was too smart for the land of Giggles. So she came here, and now she gets spanked every day because speaking in rhyme is hard, and the very wise man asks very dumb riddles. Just then, the very wise man came to the little girl who had spoken to the Brownies the night before. She couldn't answer her riddle, and she was sent off to be spanked by the spanker, who lived in a little house nearby. So all of the Brownies also can't answer the weird riddle, and they're sent to be spanked. Off to the spankers, shouted the very wise man, and went on asking the clever people more riddles, which they seemed to answer perfectly. The Brownies were well spanked by the spanker, who was a solemn little man, with soft eyes and a hard hand. Yeah, he does. They're constantly being spanked in this land because they don't talk in rhymes and they can't answer the dumb riddles. The way they get out of the land of the clever people is you have to come up with something that the very wise man isn't able to do with his magic. So they do that, and then the Brownies are like, yeah, we're leaving, and also you have to go to the spankers now because you couldn't answer our riddles or do this thing that we asked if you could do. That serves him right, said Skip. He won't be so keen on spanking now. Oh, maybe he won't be. But moving on, and we've come up to another reason why the Book of Brownies is just the holy grail for spanking references. What happens after they leave the land of the clever people? They drop the little girl off back in the land of Giggles, and she's safe and happy. They get on a train, and then the train driver just disappears at some point to go and have tea with his friends, and the Brownies are getting super impatient, so they steal the train. I understand it's annoying to have to wait places, but you don't know how to steal a train? Why are you stealing a train, Brownies? I'm fully on board with you getting spanked from here on in. You're wee brats. So they steal the train, and predictably they do not know how to drive said train. So they crash, of course, and they crash into a pond. A train full of people just into a large pond. And it's large enough that they try to escape by ripping a toadstool out of the ground and sailing away on the toadstool. They're eventually caught at the other end of the pond, and they're brought before this judge. And the judge sentences them to be spanked for their crimes. And this is one of the very few times that Enid Blyton actually specifies how many spanks a person got. So they got 6 spanks for stealing the toadstool. And they're only getting spanked for stealing the toadstool because it's Toadstool Town. It was a house. They stole someone's house and they tried to sail away on top of their house. And they get spanked 6 times for that. So 6 strokes for stealing a house. And I can hear you guys who are sitting there going, I wonder, 6 spanks for stealing a house. How many spanks are they going to get for stealing a train? None! They get spanked no times for that, because the other time they get spanked for, not for stealing the train, when they have no knowledge on how to drive a train, they have no claim to ownership of said train, and then they crash it into a pond, a train full of people into a pond. But they're not spanked for any of that. No. They are spanked for frightening the ducks. There were ducks in that pond, and they spooked the ducks when they crashed a train into the pond. That's what they're spanked for. This Toadstool Town's judicial system, smart. They've got their priorities straight, like no one should be allowed to frighten ducks. They're also spanked for answering back to the judge. And they have a really interesting way of deciding what punishment criminals are going to get in Toadstool Town. So the judge turns to the people who are just watching, not a jury or anything, just the people who are watching. Did they or did they not frighten our ducks?" he asked. "They did!" shouted everybody. "That is an answer," said the judge in a satisfied voice. "What punishment shall they have?" "Spank them!" cried the people. "Very good," said the judge, writing something with a big pen in a big book. "6 spanks for each of them." The Brownies said nothing. They thought sadly that they seemed to get out of one spank into another. "They're taken to the jail." "Very well," said the judge. "Take the prisoners away, guards, and give them 12 spanks each as a punishment for their other misdeeds." The soldiers marched the Brownies back to Toadstool Prison, gave them 12 spanks each, and left them. It's just excellent. This is a work of flipping art. I love the Book of Brownies. It is my favourite Enid Blyton book. And these 2 chapters are why. They're 2 back-to-back chapters that have spanking built in to the story and into the fabric of society. Like, the Land of the Clever People does judicial spankings for not being able to answer riddles or speak in rhyme. And it's sort of implied that they use spankings for basically every time you break a rule, you get spanked in the Land of the Clever People. The Toadstool Town, the very next chapter, they also get spanked for committing crimes, which I just think is just wonderful. Imagine if we lived in a world where that was the crime. You steal a train and they're willing to overlook that. But they're not willing to overlook the fact that you frightened some ducks when you did steal the train. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed making this video tremendously because all I had to do was read some of my favourite books again, which, never a bad thing. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I enjoyed making it very much. If you'd like to like the video and subscribe to me, that would help me out a lot. And if you'd like more things like this, then I'm happy to oblige. Just let me know what kind of topic you would like, and I'll see if I can make a video on that topic, if I have the ability and or interest. Yeah. Bye everybody!